There comes a time in every life when the heart wrestles with questions too heavy for easy answers. And one of those questions is whether divorce and remarriage are sins. Many carry this burden in silence, ashamed to speak it aloud, afraid that faith and failure cannot exist in the same breath. Yet the truth is, every person who walks this earth knows the taste of broken promises, the sting of disappointment, and the longing for redemption. This is not just a question of theology. It's a cry of the soul for understanding, for mercy, for peace. Marriage is sacred. Yes, it is a covenant, a promise made before God. But so is grace. Grace is sacred too. And when the two meet, when broken people stumble beneath the weight of love gone wrong, grace does not turn away. It kneels beside them. The same God who hates sin also heals sinners. The same God who values marriage also values the person whose heart has been crushed beneath it. This message is not to justify pain, nor to make light of vows, but to remind every wounded soul that God's compassion runs deeper than our mistakes. Life does not end when a marriage ends. Redemption is not cancelled by divorce. The human story is filled with brokenness, but it is also filled with restoration. And maybe, just maybe, your greatest fall is only the beginning of your greatest testimony. You see, when we talk about divorce and remarriage, most people rush to judgment. They point fingers, they quote verses, they speak of rules, but they forget the beating heart behind the question. They forget that behind every decision, there's a story. Behind every broken vow, there's a soul that once believed in forever. Life isn't black and white the way we wish it was. Sometimes the good people hurt, sometimes the faithful ones fall, and sometimes love, despite all the prayers and promises, just breaks. And when it does, the question rises like a whisper in the night. Have I sinned beyond forgiveness? Or does grace still reach me here? To understand this, you've got to step away from judgment and step into compassion. Judgment sees the surface. Compassion looks deeper. Judgment calls it failure. Compassion sees the pain. We forget that every person standing at the edge of divorce isn't celebrating. They're trembling. They're questioning everything they thought they knew about love, about themselves, about God. They're not looking for approval. They're looking for hope. And hope, my friend, is what the human heart needs most when the world starts to fall apart. Understanding the heart behind the question means listening before speaking, loving before correcting, and remembering that you don't know the weight someone carries. Maybe they stayed when it hurt. Maybe they prayed until they couldn't cry anymore. Maybe they fought for that marriage harder than anyone will ever understand. And when it finally broke, they didn't walk away from love. They walked toward survival. You see, sometimes choosing to live again is not rebellion. It's redemption in progress. It's the soul saying, I refuse to die where I was wounded. I still believe there's a future beyond this pain. Faith was never about perfection. It was about the pursuit of truth. The courage to rise after the fall, the willingness to let grace do what judgment never can. Restore what's been broken. When you start seeing people through the lens of mercy instead of the law, you start seeing them the way heaven does. And that changes everything. Because the heart of the question, is divorce and remarriage a sin, is not about rebellion against God. It's about the cry of someone who still wants to be right with Him despite their scars. Before you judge someone's story, remember you're only seeing the middle of the chapter. God's still writing the ending. And He's a God who specializes in comebacks, in restoration, in second chances that defy logic. You don't get closer to truth by pointing fingers. You get there by opening your heart. You don't honor God by shaming the broken. You honor Him by showing them His love. Because the moment you start understanding the heart behind the question, you realize that grace was never meant for the perfect. It was meant for the wounded, the weary, the ones still trying to find their way back to the light. There's a difference between knowing the law and living the spirit of grace. The law can tell you what's right and what's wrong, but grace shows you how to live when life falls apart. The law points its finger. Grace opens its arms. The law says you failed. Grace says you can rise again. When you live under the weight of rules, without understanding the heart behind them, you start to miss the beauty of mercy. You start to see faith as a courtroom instead of a home. But when grace walks in, everything changes. Suddenly, what looked like the end becomes a new beginning. People often think that if they've broken a commandment, if their marriage fell apart, if they remarried, they've somehow fallen out of God's reach. But you can't out-sin grace. You can't outrun mercy. The letter of the law was written on stone, but grace is written on the human heart. It's alive, breathing, moving through every mistake and every moment of regret, whispering that you're still loved, still seen, still chosen. That doesn't mean the law doesn't matter. It means grace completes what the law could never finish. The law can expose your weakness, but only grace can heal it. Living in the spirit of grace means understanding that God doesn't see you through your failures. He sees you through His compassion. When you live by grace, you stop trying to earn love and start accepting it. You stop hiding your scars and start realizing they're proof that you survived. Grace doesn't erase the past, but it redeems it. It takes what was meant to break you and turns it into something that builds you. It teaches you that holiness isn't about never falling. It's about never giving up. It's about choosing kindness over condemnation, love over judgment, forgiveness over fear. The letter of the law makes you afraid to approach God after you've stumbled. The Spirit of grace draws you closer. It says, "Come as you are, not as you think you should be." It says, "Your story isn't over. Your worth isn't lost. Your faith isn't finished." When you live in grace, you start to see others differently too. You stop measuring them by their failures and start seeing them through the lens of hope. You stop labeling and start loving. That's the kind of faith that changes people. It's not the law that transforms hearts. It's love. So, when the question comes, is divorce and remarriage a sin? You answer not with a cold rule book, but with a warm heart. You remember that grace always triumphs over guilt, mercy always outruns shame, and love always fulfills what the law began. Because in the end, the Spirit of grace is not about what you've done wrong. It's about what God can still make right. And when you choose to live by grace instead of fear, you discover that even your most painful chapters can still lead to redemption. There are moments in life when promises shatter like glass, and all you can do is stare at the pieces scattered around your feet. You gave your heart, your time, your prayers, and somehow it still broke. That's where many people lose hope, thinking a broken vow means a broken future. But that's not how redemption works. Redemption steps into the ruins and says, "This is not where your story ends." It whispers that even the ashes of your past can become the foundation of something beautiful if you let grace rebuild what pain tried to destroy. You see, a vow isn't just words spoken before witnesses. It's a covenant made with love and intention. But love, as pure as it begins, can face storms that shake even the strongest souls. And when the storm wins, it doesn't mean you've failed God. It means you've lived through something that only grace can heal. The power of redemption isn't found in pretending the pain never happened. It's found in allowing that pain to transform you. It's about turning the loss into wisdom, the heartbreak into strength, the regret into a reminder that even broken people can be used for something good. Second chances aren't about rewriting the past. They're about rewriting your future. They're not about erasing what was, but about proving that what's left can still shine. Redemption doesn't ignore your mistakes. It redeems them. It takes what the world calls failure and calls it growth. It takes your wounds and turns them into testimonies. And when you finally stop running from your past and start learning from it, that's when the healing begins. Because grace doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It meets you right where you fell and lifts you higher than you ever thought you could stand. Sometimes, the most powerful stories come from the most painful chapters. People see your scars and think they disqualify you, but they don't know those scars are proof you survived what tried to destroy you. Redemption means you don't have to stay stuck in shame. You don't have to keep replaying the mistakes. You can step forward, not because you've earned forgiveness, but because forgiveness already found you. The same God who sees the broken vow also sees the broken heart. And He values the heart more. He's not done with you just because something in your life didn't work out. He's preparing you for what's next. So when life offers you a second chance, take it with humility, with gratitude, with courage. Let it remind you that grace doesn't erase your past. It redeems your purpose. Every second chance is proof that mercy still wins, that love still restores, that God still writes new beginnings out of old endings. And when you rise again, stronger, wiser, more compassionate, you'll realize that redemption was never just about being forgiven. It was about discovering who you really are when grace gives you another chance to live, love, and become whole again. When a marriage falls apart, it's not just papers that tear, it's hearts, dreams, and the very sense of who you thought you were. The silence that follows can feel heavier than any words ever spoken. You start to question everything you're worth, your choices, your faith. It's as if the light went out and you're left walking through a valley with no clear way forward. But here's the truth. Healing the soul is not about rushing through the pain. It's about allowing yourself to feel it, face it, and rise through it. The fall might have broken something in you, but it didn't destroy you. What feels like an ending might just be the beginning of your rebuilding. Rebuilding after the fall of a marriage starts with honesty. Honesty about your hurt, your fears, and even your mistakes. You can't heal what you refuse to acknowledge. And healing isn't weakness, it's courage in motion. It's standing in front of the mirror, seeing the cracks, and deciding they won't define you. Every scar has a story, and every tear carries truth. You don't need to hide from it anymore. You need to breathe through it, walk with it, and let time and faith do their work. Because healing doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you start believing that your soul is worth mending. The process of rebuilding your life after a broken marriage isn't just about moving on. It's about moving inward. It's about rediscovering who you are outside of what you've lost. You learn to love yourself again, to trust again, to dream again. You start to understand that being alone doesn't mean being empty. It means being given the sacred space to grow. Maybe the fall wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. Maybe it stripped away what you thought you needed so you could finally see what you truly deserve. Forgiveness becomes the cornerstone of your healing. Not just forgiving the one who hurt you, but forgiving yourself. You did the best you could with what you knew then. Now, you know more, and you can do better. Forgiveness doesn't excuse the pain, but it releases its power over you. When you let go of bitterness, you make room for peace. And peace, once it enters your soul, begins to rebuild everything the storm tore down. That's where strength is born. Not in pretending you're fine, but in facing your brokenness and choosing to rise anyway. In time, you'll look back and realize the fall didn't end you. It refined you. The heartbreak that once felt unbearable will become the reason you learned resilience. The loneliness that once felt like punishment will become the soil where self-love grows. Healing the soul after a fall isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. You'll walk taller, softer, wiser. You'll love differently, not from need, but from wholeness. And one day, you'll thank the pain for teaching you that even after everything falls apart, grace still builds again. There comes a time when the tears have dried, the echoes of the past have softened, and your heart starts to whisper again. That whisper is hope, quiet but persistent, reminding you that love didn't die with your marriage. It just went through a transformation. Love renewed isn't about replacing what was lost. It's about rediscovering what's possible. It's about believing that God can take what's broken and write something new, something better, something built on truth, healing, and grace. When God writes a new chapter, He doesn't erase the old one. He redeems it. He uses every mistake, every heartbreak, every sleepless night, and turns them into lessons that prepare you for the kind of love you were, always meant to give and receive. When you've been through the storm, love feels different. It's no longer about perfection or fairy tales. It's about peace. It's about finding someone, or even finding yourself, in a way that feels steady and sacred. Love renewed doesn't rush. It grows quietly with patience and gratitude. It knows what it costs to build trust again, and it values every moment of honesty. You start to love with your eyes open, with your spirit grounded, because you've learned that love isn't just about romance. It's about respect, kindness, forgiveness, and faith. It's not just a feeling, it's a choice made every day, even when it's hard. When God writes a new chapter, He doesn't ask you to forget the past. He asks you to carry its wisdom. The pain that once broke you becomes the reason you love deeper, listen better, and give grace more freely. You begin to see that every closed door wasn't rejection. It was redirection. What you thought was the end was really an invitation to trust that God's pen still moves, even in the silence. You may have walked through loss, but you didn't walk alone. Every step, every tear, every prayer was seen. And now you stand stronger because of it. That's what divine love does. It restores what human love could not. Love renewed also means loving yourself enough to believe you deserve joy again. It means opening your heart without fear, knowing that you are not who you used to be. The person standing here today carries scars, yes, but also strength. You are wiser, gentler, more aware of what truly matters. And when love finds you again, it won't complete you. It will complement you. It will meet you where healing left off and remind you that God never stopped believing in your capacity to love, to grow, to begin again. So when God turns the page and starts a new chapter in your life, don't resist it. Step into it with faith. Let go of what was and embrace what can be. You'll see that every ending was really preparation for a greater beginning. Love renewed isn't about going back. It's about moving forward with grace in your heart and gratitude in your soul. Knowing that the author of your story always saves his most beautiful work for the pages written after the pain. In the end, this journey isn't about failure or shame. It's about transformation. It's about realizing that even when life breaks your heart, it can't break your purpose. Divorce doesn't define you, and remarriage doesn't condemn you. What defines you is how you rise, how you heal, how you choose grace when the world offers judgment. Life will test your faith. It will strip away your comfort. But it will also reveal your strength. And when you look back, you'll see that every tear watered the soil of your becoming. You'll understand that God never left you in the wreckage. He was rebuilding you in the silence. So stand tall, not as someone who failed, but as someone who learned. Walk forward, not in guilt, but in gratitude. Love again, not because you forgot the pain, but because you found the courage to believe in beauty after brokenness. This isn't the end of your story. It's the start of your redemption. And when the next chapter begins, you'll know it was written by a hand far greater than your own, one that turns every heartbreak into healing, every ending into a beginning, and every scar into a symbol of grace